Greetings, and welcome to a video on the Revenant in Guild Wars 2. I've been spending a lot of time getting my Asura, naturally, Revenant, up in levels. This is actually Tier 2 Asura Cultural Armor. There is a Tier 3 that is technically higher level. I'm just using the look of it. This is actually different kinds of armor. But right now, I'm actually going for this is a DPS build I've been testing. It's been working really, really good. I'm completely geared up in Rampager's armor. I've got actually I have primary stats are Rampagers. That is going to be power, precision, and condition damage. Specifically because you want the power for the upfront punch. The condition damage is all of the dots that get put onto, all the conditions, and I will go into that in a minute. Precision means your critical hit rate goes up drastically, and that's one of the best parts about this, is being able to really open up some pretty serious damage when you do some of those initial hits. Plus that is power and precision working together. The condition damage follows up with the burning, the bleeds, torments, and everything else, and the damage really stacks. Now, I'm going for a different perspective here. I actually want a DPS with high survivability. I'm not going raw glass cannon, as it's sometimes called, where it's all power, all precision, all condition damage, maybe some ferocity thrown in, but nothing else. Well, what I've actually gone with for the runes on my armor is Superior Rune of the Dolyak. The Dolyak rune set actually has toughness and vitality. Toughness is, of course, your damage mitigation, and vitality is your health, how many hit points you actually have. Plus that perk number 6, as you can see right there on the Superior set, it says regenerate health every second. So we get a little bit of extra health tick on this. On my weapons, these are power, vitality, and condition damage weapons that I've actually got going on here. Or power and condition damage weapons. Some have extra. This is a Rampager's weapon right there. This is a named weapon that I got from loot somewhere, and I can't remember where. I'm going for things that aid in damage output, 50% chance on critical, trigger a flame blast around you for up to 240, I guess it's meters? 240 foot radius, basically, around your character, which is most usually the range you're working within for melee, and this is a very heavily melee character. I love this armor, by the way. It's very shiny and pointy and everything. We've got power, condition damage, sometimes vitality thrown in. There's power, precision, condition damage again. More power, more precision, more condition damage. You get the point. It's all stacked like that, heavily into power, condition damage, heavily into precision, which means we get an increased critical hit chance. Right now, our crit chance is 55%. Now, that is in part due to our equipment, but it's also in part due to our specializations. Now, I am 80. I have unlocked let's go down here real quick, the Herald specialization. I have 64% of it unlocked, enough of it to be useful. But this is straight up Revenant, normal core Revenant stuff. Now, of course, the Revenant is a class that you can only have access to if you have the Heart of Thorns expansion now. But I really am enamored with it. Now, I'm going to put a disclaimer in here. There are a lot of parts of the Revenant that are quite obviously still in beta. There's parts of this class. It is a brand new class. It has only been in testing and in external and internal testing, much less release, this year alone. Whereas all the other classes in Guild Wars 2 have been out for 3 years now, and they've been balanced, fine-tuned, tweaked, and everything else. So the Revenant still has some rough spots, but it's okay because it's got a really good starting point. So the way that it works, Revenants actually have different demons. They have different spirits, different spirits that they're channeling, that they get in touch with from the mists, the spirit world. And they're basically pulling the spirit nature of certain historical figures and channeling that spirit to imbue them with special capabilities. The legendary dwarf, Jalis, he is actually the tank stance. You have the demon, Malix. You have, he is heavily into conditions, dot damage, things of this nature. The Centaur Ventari, he has the healing stance, and the legendary assassin Shiro. Now, we're going to be going into assassin and demon stances. Specifically, we're going to be bouncing back and forth. You can't have two. I've got the legendary assassin Shiro Tagachi. I've got the demon stance, legendary demon Malix the Unyielding, and you bounce back and forth between these. Now, when you change states, you'll notice I have a specific heal for Shiro, some utility skills, and an elite skill. When you swap stances, all of these stance changes. So you have two different sets of abilities that you're bouncing back and forth between. Even these abilities can even kind of interplay with your weapon skills differently. And I also have a different set of weapons that I can swap back and forth between. So it's all about versatility and moving back and forth within your own kind of pool of capabilities. Corruption deals with the Malix, specifically the legendary demon stance. It is heavily into condition damage. Chance on critical hit to deal torment, extra torment, on top of the torment that some actual attacks already put on. Like the mace, the main hand mace, the main attack, your auto melee attack has poison, torment, and more torment. It's nice. I like it. The poison even has a number of bounces that it will do between multiple targets nearby, which is very, very interesting. It'll hit a target and then bounce to several others. It's a very unique mechanic. Anyway, Searing Fissure, burning damage, Echoing Eruption, more torment damage, and it's a heavy torment damage too. Frigid Blitz, actually offhand axe, slows down your target. Slows down that movement speed and their skill recharge rate considerably. And then Temporal Rift, of course, more torment damage. So, he's got a heal that does an extra bonus per condition on you. Now, this is where Malix breaks a little bit. The original concept for Malix way back in beta was to actually have conditions randomly popping onto you, and you were mitigating those conditions as best you could and using them to empower you. So there were some abilities that boosted bonus damage per condition. Now, that's not on the bad guy. That's on me, right? You have, whenever you use a legendary stance, demon stance, skill, it grants resistance, which means conditions do nothing. So your key was to trigger demon stance abilities constantly enough to keep that resistance going so that you would never be affected by the conditions that are on me. So yes, basically what I'm running right now, this is Rampant Vex. This is a passive, a minor. You automatically get that. You have Venom Enchantment, which means all of your attacks, if they do put a chance to put a torment on there, you get an extra little boost of poison. And the poison lasts a lot longer than it normally would. Now, here's the fun part. Not only do crit hits do torment, not only does this attack do torment, and that does torment, all critical hits do torment all weapons. And that means every time you critical hit, you'll put poison on, plus extra poison there, and extra poison there. And Unyielding Anguish, a legendary leap that chills and torments. Plus, torment, you guessed it. So there's lots of torment and poison constantly being applied onto your target. That's where condition damage comes in. Striking a foe gives you a chance to remove a boon from that foe. This is bugged. It doesn't actually work. I have tested it, and it doesn't do anything. Chance on hit 50%. Once they get this ironed out, though, it's going to be once every 10 seconds. You'll pull a buff, a beneficial buff off of your foe. It's going to be really good. Frigid Perception, chance on critical hit, 50% chance to actually chill and slow down, which means I have multiple opportunities to slow down the movement of foes. This could be a running target that's trying to get away from me. It could be the fact that I'm trying to intercept and slow down a charging target that's trying to get to another party member. Yearning Empowerment, torments last longer, 33% longer as a matter of fact. This, everybody say it with me, is bugged. It doesn't actually increase the durations at all. It's a nice thought, but burning nearby foes when using an elite skill. This is actually useful, and you'll see why, because this is a channeled skill. Basically, you turn it on and it runs, then you can turn it off and turn it back on in rapid succession just to get a quick boost to your stats, put out some quick torment to AE targets. And this means every time, once every 10 seconds you do that, you're burning 5 targets within range, and that's more dot damage. Now, you do have other options, but right now Maniacal Persistence doesn't really work properly, so at most you're getting a critical hit increase of maybe 10%. And right now I've already got 55%. This does not lend me a lot of benefit. Pulsating Pestilence, this is again working on the premise that you have conditions on you that you are accruing. And when you actually are hit, you have a chance to copy them off to nearby targets. Doesn't work, it's actually bugged. So this is the best choice right now, Diabolic Inferno. Now, the second line I've got is Devastation. Devastation is actually working off of Shiro, the assassin. This is mutilate defenses. Strike a foe, gives a chance to apply vulnerability, 25% chance. This means as you hit a target more and more, you have more and more damage going into them and more condition damage going into them. This is really nice. Gain increased ferocity while dual wielding. What this means is you actually can boost ferocity, boost your critical hit rate. And I think it actually boosts the magnitude of the critical hit, how big it is. So your critical hits hit for harder. Now, this one, when you attack while wielding a sword, gain a stack of viscerous laceration. This is bugged. It does not always trigger when it's supposed to. Plus, I'm not a biggest fan of the sword. The sword is good for main hand, but I don't use it a lot. Now, another alternative that you could do with this is Malicious Reprisal. Basically, if an attack gets blocked, you get a buff that lasts for 5 seconds, which means that within that next 5 seconds, at least 2 of your attacks will actually be unblockable, or 1 attack will be unblockable. So if somebody blocks an attack, you have a 5-second window where another attack will be completely unblockable to them, and you're guaranteed to deliver that damage through. It's really, really nice. That would be a really good alternate to this if you want to. Targeted Destruction. Deal increased damage to targets with vulnerability. This is great because it plays into this perfectly. As soon as you get 1 stack of vulnerability with a 1% incoming damage boost to the target, a 1% incoming condition damage boost, this goes up. 7% extra damage right away. Gain might when using assassin skills. This would be from this stance over here. Anytime I use an assassin skill from this set, I gain a stack of might, which means my power and my condition damage goes up. It only triggers in combat. You cannot front load this, quote unquote, before going into a fight. When you strike foes that have vulnerability, again, plays into this, you gain life siphon. You basically deal a certain amount of damage and get a percentage of that back as health. This helps you long term. It really will sustain you. There is siphon life from foes when hitting a foe from behind or from the side. This encourages a lot of moving around. This actually plays a lot in part with dodging, just in general, with Frigid Blitz in general, as well as some of the other abilities with the assassin stance. This really does help you. Now, there are other options you could do here. Increase damage to targets below threshold. This is a really good choice. As soon as they drop below that halfway mark, your damage gets a flat 20% increase, and that's really good. However, this is self-sustainability. So yeah, then we've actually got Retribution. Now, this is the wild card. This is the tanking set that goes with Jollis, the tank stance. I'm not using him. I'm using offensive stances, but what we've actually got here is Enduring Recovery. Every time you're struck, once every 10 seconds, you can gain 25 of your endurance back, which is really good. What that means is you have every time you're hit, every 10 seconds, you can gain a little bit of extra endurance back to get dodging better. Now, create an aura that blocks projectiles and weakened foes. This is fall damage. I'm using this implicitly because of some of the higher map areas that we're actually dealing with in the Heart of Thorns. I've got also a better option is, or just as good an option, is Close Quarters. You have basically targets from outside of melee range, medium melee range, do 10% less damage. And this is a very good option specifically because of how it works. Now, I like this because you can actually ambush targets. You jump just high enough to do a little bit of like one or two points of fall damage to yourself. And this gets a bubble that goes up around you that actually starts stacking weakness on all targets that you're actually near, which means that you can drop down onto targets and start them off weakened in battle. It's a really good tactic. But close quarters is a very, very good second bet. I really do like this one as well. You've got unwavering avoidance against stability after you dodge. That is extremely useful for not getting knocked over constantly. Retaliation after you dodge, which basically means for 2 seconds, if you get hit once, it burns 1 stack of retaliation, and you will actually reflect the entire attack back on its source. That's a butt saver. Determined resolution. You take reduced damage when below a certain threshold of health. This is actually good. Under 75% health, you take 10% less damage. That works in play with this as well. It's really, really nice. And then down here, steadfast rejuvenation. When struck, once every 4 seconds, you will heal yourself. 50% trigger chance. It fires off a lot. So why is this important? This all interplays together with these 2 stances. I'm going to go out into the field, and I'll show you guys what's going on. When I'm roaming out in the field, I tend to actually start off in Malik's stance, specifically because Unyielding Anguish, that leap opener, makes such a great opening gambit on a fight. It gets you in close, in melee range, where you're going to be spending most of your time in this. Now, I do switch back and forth between Malik's and Shiro, especially because both sets have separate cooldowns. So once you've used and popped all your cooldowns for Malik's, switch to Shiro, go through your abilities, and then go back. By that time, a lot of things are off of cooldown, and you can go through your abilities again. Now, this does include both of your heals. That's very, very important. During this fight, you're going to see me dodging as much as possible, specifically because it grants me stability and prevents me from getting knocked over, like that. The more I dodge as much as possible, the less time I spend on my back. But here's the great part of this build. When you're hitting, even if you're in Shiro stance, all of your attacks that are critting and all of your weapon skills from the primary mace and secondary axe are still laying conditions on the target. What that means is you still have capabilities of dealing damage, and it's still ticking on the target, even though you're on your back and still getting up from being tossed. It's a really good setup. It's one of the reasons why I like it. And when you pop as Malik, that elite, you'll see a lot of torment get piled onto the target real quick. The best thing to move once you do that is turn it off so it doesn't drain your whole energy bar, flip back a few steps, and let the mob come to you and move some. What that does is maximize torment. Torment does a certain amount of damage stationary, and even more damage when the target's moving. So force them to move around a little bit. Really have that torment dig into them. Make them work for it. So again, open up with a couple of quick hits of the mace. You've already got torment and poison on the target. Turn on your elite real quick in Malik's, and there we go. The target's on fire, combined with number 2 of the mace. Factor into that, number 3 stacks on even more torment. Number 4 lets you pass through the target to the other side, do a considerable punch of damage. This is mace number 4 offhand, and it actually chills them. And then the final thing, number 5, opens a rift. Now here's the point on the rift, that Axe 5 skill. It's a little slow to fire off. There it is right there. But what it does is if you aim it a little off center, it actually moves all targets near that line to the center line of it. What that means is things will get suddenly shifted out of place, and that interrupts abilities being cast. That is very, very important. Now, it is not a strong form of CC, but it does work very, very well. These are all normal targets, not a lot of vets, except for some of the beetles that I'm hitting. But you will see that I can stand toe-to-toe, and a lot of that heal-on conditional stuff is really working for my advantage as you see those green numbers pop off of me at regular points during the fight. That all balances out. It all starts adding up. Every single time I take damage, I start gaining health back. Every time I put vulnerability on the target, I gain health back. And sometimes it's best to lay a lot of pretty thick conditions on the target and just back away and let him do work for you. That's the whole point of the build. I'm really hoping you guys are going to find something inspirational in this, something interesting. I can't wait to hear back from you. If you are interested in more builds like this, please give it a thumbs up, give it a like, maybe comment about suggestions of your own. I'll admit, I'm still very new to this whole videos about Guild Wars 2 class builds. The only ones I've done previously were for my engineer. So I'm still expanding, open to suggestions. Thanks very much, and have a great day.